Welcome to Power Fueled Living's The Word is Out. Today we're discussing step parenting. Stay tuned.
Power Fueled Living. Power Fueled Living. Finding a purpose to fulfill your life. Living out your passions with a fuel life.
Welcome to today's show. I am excited to have with me Tammy Daughtry. Now, Tammy, you are a marriage and family therapist.
Yes.
Also a stepmother.
Yes.
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 And then I have Vonetta Carter.
Yes.
And you are a stepmother.
Yes.
You're also a minister. Yes. And Vonetta, are you an author?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, you were in the process of writing.
Yes,
last time we talked, you were in the process of writing your book. Well, I am so glad to have you guys here because I feel like you have great knowledge in this area. You always, I mean, of course, you have the experience. And I have the experience of being a stepchild. So we're going to have this discussion because, you know, we know that step parenting is growing.
Right.
We know that there are a lot of challenges that come with step parenting, and there's also a lot of challenges that the children deal with.
Right.
So Tammy, let's start with you. I want to talk about some of the challenges of step parenting and how we can overcome it, as well as some biblical wisdom from it.
Okay.
Or for it.
Well, the interesting thing, Lisa, today is actually, in this current generation, the step family is the #1 family type in America.
Wow.
In 2015, it surpassed single parent or traditional family. So for some people, that's really great news because God redeems and gives people a second chance at love.
Oh my gosh.
You know, I married a widower who was a precious man of God, pastor for 25 years, lost his wife in a car accident. I did go through a divorce, but when we blended, it gave both of our families a chance to love again and a chance to have siblings and to have a lot of fun. So blended families are not bad. You know, some people don't understand it, so they may dismiss the importance of it, but they are different. They're very different than traditional family, as we all know. So,
but I love how you said that God redeemed.
Yes, yes, and
because
amen.
for generations there was such a stigma on divorce.
Yeah.
To where people were feeling guilty about remarrying. They were staying in very damaging marriages.
Yeah.
Trying not to divorce.
Right.
So I love that redemption piece, how you described that. And I did not realize that it had grown to the point where now it is the norm and it has overwritten just that first family, that first parent.
Right. And we work with Family Life Ministries. They actually have a national reach on step family. And, you know, we want to clarify that we certainly all believe in traditional marriage.
Right. Of
Plan
course.
A for our children, for the next generation of families. We always want plan A. Sometimes plan A isn't possible. Either someone passes away, abandons their marriage, or is unfaithful. Can be emotional abuse, physical abuse, a lot of different reasons people divide. But so by cheering for step families, I always want to make sure people know I believe in traditional family.
Yeah.
That was the dream I had. That's what I have. That's the dream I have for my 4 children, and that they'll go on and have traditional, you know, lifelong marriages. But sometimes they're formed out of death or divorce. But the thing they all have in common is loss. So when you talk about the children, sometimes they're excited to have a new step parent, but sometimes that reminds them that their other one's not there. And so children carry a lot of loss when either a parent is not showing up, doing their part, a parent has passed away. So a lot of different situations happen for kids where they might be really happy that mom or dad is happy with their new partner, but then it reminds them that, oh, you know, I kind of miss our old family. So kids sometimes get confused on kids get confused on a lot of things just because they're kids.
Right,
and, you know, nothing, they don't do it on purpose, but I think one of the things that's important to think about when we're talking to the adults, to the parents and the family, is that the kids have what we call competing attachments where, and I was a stepchild too, so I can just talk from my story. You know, I had an awesome stepmom in my life. She was there from age 3 and up. And however, I always wondered what was the dynamic between her and my mom, you know, because at handoffs and ball games and dance recitals, they were both there. So I had 2 women that loved me, but they didn't necessarily like each other, right?
Okay.
So it was confusing to me because I was curious, well, I love my mom, she's awesome, and I love my dad, and he loves my stepmom, but sometimes there seems like there's some stuff in the air that I don't get and I don't understand, and so, you know, being a step-parent is tough. I look back now and I think, oh, I probably wore my stepmom out, right? I was 13, I remember telling her, oh, I don't live here, I don't have to dust. What do you mean, I don't have to do chores? I was a tough little kid. So I look back on that and I've apologized to her actually for probably being a very difficult stepchild to her. But as God made it possible for me to be a stepmom, at the time the kids were, see, our son was 12, Jenna was 16, just turned 16, and then the oldest was 21. And so I had a 9-year-old, so I went from being a single mom, one child, 9 years old, to fast forward, whoa, I'm a stepmom to an adult, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I had a lot of catching up to do.
Sure.
So, but those competing attachments in general are where, you know, the children love all the adults in their family, but the adults don't necessarily get along, and there's
Right.
always stuff, right? And so kids feel kind of caught and confused. You know, can I tell my dad that I really like my stepdad? Can I tell my mom that I really like my new stepmom?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Can I tell my stepmom I miss my mom?
Yeah.
Right? She
yeah.
didn't show up in my life, but I miss her. Can I say that? And so kids have these competing attachments. Now, parents do too. So the last thing I'll say real quick on the tough stuff that, you know, I walked through it myself 9 years ago, becoming stepmom to 4 kids, read a lot of books, taught a lot of classes, been to grad school. But the number one thing Jay and I struggled with was, how do we make parenting decisions, you know, together, coming from different parenting styles, different families of origin? How do we do that and not allow it to come between us? Because when my daughter was doing something that annoyed him, I had a competing attachment. Like, I love my daughter, it really wasn't that bad, but I love my husband. Well, when his 21-year-old was doing something that was tough, and I could see it very objectively, he had the competing attachment. That's my baby girl. She might be 21 in an adult body, but that's my baby. So he would see her and see me and know we were in conflict, and he was struggle. So that competing attachment dynamic, I think, is the kind of the baseline that we talk to couples about.
Okay.
In trying to understand what the children are going through, what adults are going through, and then trying to bring some clarity to it so that, hopefully, so that in the process, kids aren't getting hurt, aren't getting mistreated in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Stepmoms can be pretty harsh. Stepdads can be harsh, right?
Yeah.
And for the step-parent that's watching that's never had their own children and married in and became an instant parent, I always think that's the toughest job on anybody.
Sure.
You know, because as we all have our kids and they grow up, we kind of learn how to be a parent, and they're thrown right in, instant parenting. So it's all challenging, but I do believe in the big picture, God absolutely uses it for good and redeems a lot of pain and loss that families have gone through.
So let's talk about the competing attachment with children, because I remember that as a stepchild. I remember my stepmother, who was very kind to me. I really liked her, and she and my mother got along fine. My mother never said a negative word about her.
Awesome, that's great.
So what that meant for me then is that I became very attached to her. And so, you know, I remember, though, one day calling her mom in front of my mom. And I remember the expression on my mom's face was like,
What happened?
what did you just say? You know? And that made me feel bad and also confused. And also, you know, so all of these emotions, because, you know, I felt like she was mom too.
Sure, yeah.
And my biological father, so I was visiting him. It was visitation time with him. And then he pulled me in the other room and he said, Connie is not your mother. And so now I'm hit with that. Okay, Dad doesn't approve of this either.
How old were you?
I was probably 6.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
five or 6. Yeah.
So it set the stage to be a
So
little
it
confused.
set the stage for, well, gosh, okay. So now she's just Connie, and she's always been just Connie's ever since. Yeah. And it wasn't that my father was trying to cause any division, but I think he just noticed my mom's facial expression and just, you know, wanted to make sure everything stayed calm.
Sure.
But we really did have a great relationship going forward. Yeah.
Interesting.
But I love her.
Yeah, absolutely.
I absolutely love her. And but again, so then it was like, okay, when I did visit, I found myself, you know, kind of not distant, but not as close, and kind of pulling away when I've had those feelings of love, and I wanted to embrace that.
Sure.
So you're right, it can become very confusing for some children in that space.
Yeah.
Now you have experienced some of the same things, right?
Yes.
So what was that competing attachment? Did you notice that among your children?
I noticed it, but I always try to do everything in a group.
Tell me about that.
And the Lord dealt with me about that, because I thought I was doing the right thing by doing everything in a group, and I would say things like, well, if I don't have enough for 5, I'm not going to buy for any. I'm just going to wait until I have enough, because I never wanted anybody to feel
So you were
left
trying to
out.
be fair among everyone and
Yeah.
not single anyone out.
Yes, but the Lord told me, it was interesting, because one day the Lord said, you can't just pile them all in a group and minister to them because they're all in a different place. This one need more hugs. This one need to be encouraged more. This one need, you know, check this one homework, but you know, you don't have to check that one's homework. So it was like trying to learn all of these children personalities individually. That was a process, because they were all around the same age. When I met my husband, I had a 7-year-old and a 6-year-old, and he had a 5, 6, and 7-year-old.
Wow.
So we had, yes,
When did
so-
you sleep?
I know I didn't. I wore a lot of concealer because I didn't really get to sleep, because I was always trying to figure out, okay, how do I effectively, and I was growing too, you know, so overnight our family went from just me and 2 little girls to a family of 7 overnight.
So now when we talk about the adult competing attachments, let's talk more about that, because that seems to be a big problem, and one of the things that I find myself counseling couples with. Because it's exactly like you said, the step parent has more of an objective outlook, and so they feel like the child is maybe taking advantage of situations, manipulating situations, manipulating the biological parent, and so that's a big deal, and so that causes a rift between the parents. So what is one of the strategies that you recommend to deal with that?
Well, it's funny, when Jay and I first were married and we were struggling, you know, we loved each other. There's no question we were supposed to be together. But we'd go upstairs to the master suite, close the door, and try to have a parent conversation that would last 2 and 3 hours, trying to figure out, are we proactive, reactive, what are we doing about all 4 kids, right? Different things we had to deal with. So part of what we figured out in that moment, or eventually, probably about 2 years in, is we had to slow down, and we really had to make sure we were listening to our mate, that we were doing reflective listening, you know, actually being able to express back what we heard each other say, instead of just getting defensive to tell our opinion.
Or making assumptions about what you think
Right.
the person said.
Oh, yeah. And my husband's an introvert and I'm an extrovert, so I have a bazillion words, like they start rolling and they just roll. And I had to quickly learn to pause and to honestly say, Tammy, hush, like give your husband a minute. And he would pause, he'd be thinking, because he's an internal processor, and then he would come back with something. And it was never what I expected, right? So when I slowed down and I tried to listen and try to understand him, didn't mean I agreed with him on everything, didn't mean that he agreed with me, but I at least tried to honor him, and he tried to honor me, to understand, you know, why do we believe what we believe? What is the problem that we see in this? And how can we link arms side by side and tackle it together, instead of facing off with each other and always having conflict. The other real important thing, I think, at least for me, was a moment where we were talking about something tough, and he said, well, that's my baby girl. You know, and so I realized in that moment, I have to choose to honor and love my husband and his relationship with his children, sometimes over what seems right and logistical and objective to me. And I'm not saying that we don't have a voice. You know, in a healthy relationship, we have an equal voice. But there are moments where I recognize, and that was significant for me, that I had a choice. If I was going to push my agenda and push for a consequence or something with that daughter, I was really going to potentially harm my relationship with him. And so I paused, and I realized.
So where do you find the balance with that, though? Because I can see how that could just go beyond boundary.
Sure. Well, I guess for us, and you know, again, in my personal conversation, it's not necessarily my therapeutic lens, but personally, I knew that my husband was fully trustworthy. I knew that he had my back. There was nothing about any of this that was, you know, he was trying to dismiss my opinion. It's just he saw this situation very, very different, right? So his pattern of parenting was a little different than mine. And so we had to come together and figure that out. But the thing I respect about him, and I always was thankful, is that, you know, he was always very interested to know what I thought about my daughter. You know, if he saw something objective and I was defensive, he would say, well, tell me more. You know, what do you think? Help me understand what you're thinking. So I think in conflict with anyone, but especially in a blended family trying to make parenting decisions, honestly, it's important to slow down and hear your partner. Also figure out, how are you going to take a time out? You know, if the conflict gets too tough and you both recognize this is not going anywhere good tonight. You know, usually we were up in the room trying to talk at 10 o'clock at night when we're tired, we should be sleeping, but we don't want to go to bed mad, and so we're trying to solve our issues. And sometimes we just had to recognize, you know, we've got to trust the relationship is strong enough. We may not agree, but in the big picture, we're gonna get through this. And sometimes we forget that kids go through loss when there's divorce, you know, but that loss is just as significant for those kids. Yeah. They lose the day-to-day contact with their parents. So parents, sometimes we don't slow down enough to remember what our kids have been through. We just kind of want everybody to catch up, be this, act this way, and it's pretty unrealistic. So I just think listening, having a healthy time out, and recognizing that the bio parent will never see your child objective, and the step parent will always see your step kids objectively. And that's, I don't know, 90% of the time, I guess.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, Vonetta, have you experienced some of these same things?
Absolutely, I have. I have experienced that as well too. And you know, just the kids trying to, you know, play the parents against each other. Like they would come and say, well, could we go outside? And I would say, well, did you ask your dad? And they said, yeah, we asked Dad. I said, well, what did Dad say? Well, he said no. Well, the answer is no. I can't override what Dad says. And I was very consistent with doing that over the years, just always just showing a united front.
Yeah, and
it's important.
That in honoring? You're honoring the other parent, whether you may agree with the parent or not.
Oh, yes.
You know, the spouse. But you showed honor towards him in front of your children. That's great.
He did the same thing with me as well, too. Because some days it was hard, and I would just break down crying after the kids go to bed, and I would say, it's so hard being a stepmom, you know. And he said, Vonetta, do the doctor ever stop being the doctor? Well, you always have to be mom, you know. And I was like, wow. You know, but some days it was hard.
From your experience, Vonetta, what were some specific challenges of step-parenting?
Just always being fair. Always just being fair. And
so that was very important to
you. It was very important. Not having my kids feel like, well, we're different than them, or, you know, they're taking our mom. Like, I would never sit and have a conversation about my stepchildren with my children, because that was not appropriate.
Oh, that's a good point.
So I mean, I would never do that. I would always just treat them all as my kids.
Yeah, great stuff here. When you think about step parenting and children who feel like they can't really voice their opinion about the parent, what are some suggestions that you would give to that family?
Well, I say all kids in any kind of family, single parent, traditional family, blended family, anything, all kids need other safe, healthy outside people to talk to. Just a couple. Like, it could be a youth pastor, it could be an aunt or an uncle, but it's important for kids to have a voice to someone else that will listen and give them feedback, especially as they get into junior high and high school. research shows if there's one other healthy, stable adult in a child's life, in addition to their caregivers, that actually helps them develop. Because even kids in a traditional family, there's a lot of things they don't feel like they can talk to their parents about. But if they have a healthy, safe person, a mentor, a youth pastor, somebody like that, I would say that's always very helpful. And in extreme situations where maybe there's some behavior issues at school and you're starting to see a pattern where the child is suffering, getting them into counseling is a great thing. And I know it costs money and time and scheduling, but investing.
There's so much, but there's so much available in the counseling field now, and even family coaching, relationship coaching.
Yes, just
so there's a lot of resources available now. Yeah.
And I want to say really quick, since we're talking about step parents, I have always made it a point to honor, I mean, really intentionally honor my daughter's stepmother, because she came into her life when she was 5. And I think sometimes people think that moms and bio moms and stepmoms are just supposed to not like each other. And I like the fact that you said yours got along, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to be the norm. And I can tell you from day one of knowing that Paula was going to be in her life, I said to my daughter, I'm so excited you're going to have another person to love you. She's going to teach you things that are different than what you learned from me. And I made it always clear to my daughter that none of this is a competition, right? This is another woman that loves you. Now, when she was a teenager, she got a little smart with her on many occasions. And literally, I got a phone call one day from Paula, and she's like, I need your help. I said, what's going on? And she told me the situation. I said, put her on the phone. And she was 13, and I told Angela, if you do not honor your stepmother, do exactly what she's told you to do, you'll have a consequence with me this weekend.
Wow.
And that took, I mean, my daughter's a great girl, right? But she was 13. We've all been 13-year-old girls, right?
Right.
That was just a tough year for her. And she was pushing every boundary she could, and she was mistreating her, honestly.
Yeah.
And apparently she tells me later that the moment that Paula said, well, I'm going to call your mother. If you don't knock this off and do what I said, I'm going to call your mom. Apparently my daughter said, go ahead, because I miss her. I want to talk to her. So I love her. She loves Jesus. She's a good girl now, but when she was 13, she was tough. Right. And in that moment, I knew, I didn't know that call was coming, right? But I knew I had to show my daughter that we were in an alliance together, that we are women that love her, and that we are adults, and she's got to learn how to respect adults.
And I know that is very hard for adults. That is very hard for that situation. Mm-hmm. But you have to ask yourself, who's more important here? What is more important here?
Yeah.
Is the child more important, or your feelings, your pride, your ego, your whatever, your junk?
And we all have
because
it.
there's a lot of baggage that goes along with these types of situations, right?
Yeah.
Jealousy, envy, somebody's replacing me. What if she loves her more than she loves me? The enemy will get in your head. You'll have, negative self-talk. I mean, so much of that happens. But to be able to have the maturity, the discipline, because it does take discipline to keep that mouth closed.
Yes.
To cut that attitude off, right?
Right.
But the focus on that child, the health and welfare of that child, has to precede all of that.
Yes. Absolutely.
It has to be the most important thing right there.
Yes.
Vonetta, now your dynamic was a little different, or did you experience some of that?
It's been times where the kids came and they would share things with me, and I would say, well, let's pray about it. Let's pray for your mom, because it is important that they see, wait a minute, my stepmom is praying for my mom, and when you see God show up in those ways and they come back and it's like, Mom, you would not believe this, So I think it's important to always just show that united front. I mean, we would run into her at Walmart, and I would say, your mom is in aisle 3. Go and say hi to your mom, because it's like, go say hi to your mom. Even if she showed up at recitals, go sit with your mom. Just encouraging that, because it's like, I know who I am, and I want to love these kids, and, like you said, that's their mom, and you want to honor her.
I love what you're saying there, because I don't really think that people realize, or they're thinking at the time, that these children are going to grow up.
Right.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Are they going to grow up with baggage? Are they going to grow up with resentment? Are they going to grow up with pain?
Yes.
Because their parents, step-parents, could not honor them, focus on them, focus on their welfare.
Right. Right.
Because we can be very self-centered.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
face it.
Oh, yeah.
Selfish, self-centered.
Absolutely.
But these children, they grow up. What are you giving your children as they grow? Are you giving them life, or are you giving them death?
Right. Wow. Right. And I say all the time, I teach a lot of co-parenting classes. I speak about this all the time. This is the focus of my life 24/7, is the issues of complex family. And I tell every parent, the bio parents, the step parents, you're writing the story that your child's going to say and carry for the rest of their life. You can't control how the other person writes their story, right? Maybe you're divorced and your ex isn't writing a very good story right now, but what you're saying, how you're handling that, and even how you're choosing to speak or hold your words about the other person, that's the story your children are going to remember about you. And so we have to be responsible with our words. And I have to say, unfortunately, I think there's a lot of bio moms that make it so hard on stepmoms. They just do. They just feel that sense of defensiveness, territorialism. I don't want them to love this other woman because somehow that diminishes me. And so on behalf of bio moms that have been difficult, I just want to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry that bio moms have been like that sometimes. They're hurting. They're scared they're going to lose their kids' love and loyalty. And so I hope as some of these conversations can kind of help change the perspective that moms and bio moms can know it's not a war. It doesn't need to be a competition.
No, it doesn't.
We can all love these kids and they will benefit because of it.
Oh my gosh,
Wow.
that was so good. And our time is up. Oh, there's so much more that we can discuss,
Yes.
but I want to thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you for the wisdom. Let's leave the audience with one fuel point concerning step parenting. So Vonetta, what would you say to step parents, blended families?
The one thing that I would want to leave you with is to love unconditionally. Love the step parents, love the children unconditionally, because it is truly a gift and it's a privilege to raise healthy stepchildren.
Yeah, thank you
Amen.
so much. I love that word privilege. I don't think that a lot of parents look at it like that, as being a privilege.
Right, right. That's
God
good.
has allowed you to be a blessing
Yes, yes,
to children.
yes.
Oh my gosh. So what do you have?
I think one of the main things I always say to parents is try to give kids the emotional permission to come and go between homes, because kids have one heart in two homes. And that's not just a cute little phrase, it's the reality of every day of their life. They love all these people, but they come and go in multiple places. Give them your emotional, your physical, and even your verbal affirmation that it's good that they come and go and they have two homes. Let them enjoy their bio parents. Let them enjoy their step parents. If we give them that choice and that freedom to love, then like Vonetta said, they'll grow up into amazing young adults, and that's what we're after, is the
Yeah.
long view.
Yeah.
Because the crazy thing is, we get to still be step parents even after 18.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies, so
Thank
much.
you for having us.
And thank you for joining me on Power Fueled Living. Stay tuned next week for another great episode.
Power Fueled Living is a media outreach of Wellsprings of Life Ministries. Visit our website at www.powerfueledliving.com.
Finding a purpose to fulfill your life. Live